Mr. Speaker, this House can bear witness to the fact that throughout our last sittings, whenever members from this House stood up, questions on roads, for example, were asked, and myself, my constituency, road needs are there. Mr. Speaker, these requests drive expenditures unless we do not want to live with the reality. Every request every member has made in this House pertaining to roads in the constituency drive up expenditures. As government tries to respond to that need. And so, Mr. Speaker, when you take the budget and you see a revenue proposal in excess of 176 billion Ghana cedis, an expenditure proposal in excess of 216 billion, and you see a gap which is going to lead to that deficit financing, then, Mr. Speaker, we as a House have a question to ask whether we should respond to the plethora of needs which we in this House as members of Parliament put before government, whether government should stick to the revenue proposed and ignore the needs we have, or government should borrow. Mr. Speaker, in borrowing, the government through this budget has proposed that it is still going to manage the debt we have, the debt stock, which is not only accumulated by this government or its tenure, but historically, which even includes some Eurobond issued by the NDC when they were in government. It includes it, and which the interest payment accruing is being serviced by this government. And so when we are talking about it, we should be pragmatic in our responses to the contribution to this budget. That's my plea to the House, Mr. Speaker. But fortunately for us, Mr. Speaker, the energy environment which drives economy have been stable, available. Cars having queued so far to look for fuel to buy. Gas stations haven't advertised no gas. And electricity largely and significantly have been on, except when we are doing what you call maintenance, routine maintenance. And so, Mr. Speaker, when salaries have been paid, and most importantly, a very significant economic budget line called free SHS have been absorbed since this government came into power. It is new expenditure line which did not exist in the past, but now existing and very significant, and the budget has absorbed it. It is not cancelling it. And so, Mr. Speaker, given the energy environment the government has sustained in terms of price competitiveness, given fuel availability throughout all this crisis period, we should debate this budget in that context. And when we are doing economic performance analysis, Mr. Speaker, for example, I have heard the debate on this floor, Eurobond issues. Mr. Speaker, let me put on record that when a member stood up and chastised the government, that the government has issued a Eurobond that will mature in 2061. Mr. Speaker, I thought the member was going to clap for the government, that we could put in place a government that has credibility in the world, that the world financial market could take a 30-year loan from us. It is good news, and we should emphasize it.
Just a minute. Let me listen to a minority. I'll give you enough time. Yes, please.
Mr. Speaker, once again, another factual inaccuracy. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of State responsible for state and enterprises has said, Mr. Speaker, that our light has not gone off unless it is for routine maintenance. Mr. Speaker, he needs to be reminded that not long ago, just within the last 2 weeks, Ghana's light went off because we were unable to pay for gas that we own to Nigeria Gas. And there was and so he should be made aware of that and correct the record.
Honorable minority leader, it will come to your turn. It will come to your turn. Yes, please. Honorable Kujo, may you go on. He's going to make his submissions later. Please. Just allow Honorable Kujo to go on. Honorable Kujo.
Mr. Speaker, I want to emphasize that when the honorable member, my good friend, Honorable Ricketts Hagan, stood up and said Ghana has borrowed for 30 years, he should have clapped for the performance of the government. Because if a government can put a loan with tenure 30 years out there, and the market will lend to Ghana, then it means that we have managed the economy well. Else, Mr. Speaker, you would notice that the longest dated bond Ghana had ever issued until this government came into power wasn't exceeding 10 years. And so, for us, even in a crisis environment, to be able to issue longer dated bond, it is a sign of good economic outlook the market has for the country. And we should be happy about the performance of the government. But Mr. Speaker, the higher expenditure projected in this government in this budget proposes to respond to this need to a large extent. Mr. Speaker, one thing I would also want to put on record in the course of this debate is that when these loans are being contracted, it is not only the tenure that will give indication of whether the government performance is good or bad. The interest rate associated with it. I know when NDC were in government, interest rate on Ghana's loans, bonds, was up to 10%. And I called it microfinance interest rate. That was a reflection of Ghana's economic outlook. That's right. Today, that is not the case. And so, in spite of the crisis, Mr. Speaker, I urge all of us to support this budget because it gives the country the turnaround we desire in face of even the crisis that we've gone through. And so all members to support the budget and pass it for government to implement it to meet the needs we have. Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity.
Honorable members, before we take an adjournment, actually we are grateful to you, Honorable Kujo, because you use less than your allocation. I have a message from His Excellency the President dated 16th November 2023, and it reads, absence from Ghana. In accordance with Article 59 of the Constitution, I write to inform you that I'll be traveling outside the country on Sunday, 19th November 2023, at the invitation.
You didn't bring a camera that we can do some interviews down there?
You can use their backpack, cheap.
I think that there are many other stakeholders who bear responsibility. Very often we, the political class, just point fingers at ourselves and we don't raise the issue of everybody's responsibility. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to spend a few minutes to speak and to call out the responsibilities of various stakeholders if this budget program will succeed and if it will translate into the economic objectives we are looking at. The Ministry of Finance have done their part. They brought what we will consider as a sensible and pragmatic economic program. The budget makes sense. Parliament now has a responsibility to examine, to debate, and to approve this. If we shirk that responsibility, there will be consequences down the line. And we cannot blame the government if we shirk our responsibility. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana Revenue Authority, they have a responsibility. When we are done and we have passed the Appropriation Act and we have passed the revenue measures, the implementation to ensure that the revenue numbers are achieved rests with them. We were in this house when in 2017-2018 we passed the Taxation Fiscal Electronic Devices Act. Mr. Speaker, till today, implementation is a question that is in front of all of us. And so there's a responsibility on that side to implement as well what has been approved in this house. Mr. Speaker, the ministries, departments and agencies, chief directors, civil servants, ministers of state, chief executives, we also have a responsibility to ensure that the programs that have been outlined to deliver on the economic objectives are implemented on time and within budget. It's one thing to publish the program, it's another thing to make the budget allocation. But if we, who have been given the responsibility, do not ensure that these programs are executed in accordance with timelines and efficiently, not much will be achieved. Mr. Speaker, parliamentary oversight. Parliamentary oversight. We have a responsibility in this chamber that when programs are approved and funds are allocated, we hold the agencies and the heads of these agencies accountable for the implementation of these programs. If we don't, We can have a nice debate here, we can vote, we can have a nice economic policy, it won't translate to much. And so, Mr. Speaker, those responsibilities must also be borne. And then finally, Mr. Speaker, very finally, citizens. The government does not have money lying down somewhere. The government raises the revenues to fund the programs. This year, 0% financing from the central bank. So, Mr. Speaker, to conclude,
Honourable Minister, your time is getting up.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
1 minute. Citizens have a responsibility as well, and our ability to each fulfill our obligations is what will translate into fulfillment. So, Mr. Speaker, this economic policy is sensible and pragmatic. The budget is healthy and sensible. We all have a responsibility. Let us live up to it so that we achieve the objectives. Let us avoid excessive partisanship so that we can achieve the objectives. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. It is now the turn of Honourable Isaac Adongo. Honourable, you have 20 minutes. 20 minutes. The floor is yours now.
Mr. Speaker, I sympathize with my very good friend and honourable colleague, Honourable Kojo Okonkwo. It's a very difficult job. Mr. Speaker, it's obvious that you are as good as the budget. And if the budget that has been presented is empty, you can't force magic out of Kojo Okonkwo. And so I sympathize with you. But Mr. Speaker, I can count about 23 members on the other side. And this is their budget. If they are not interested, they should tell us to stop. Why are they not here? Mr. Speaker, the minister attempted to tell the people of Ghana that we should be celebrating a projected GDP of 1 billion Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, have you delivered 1 billion GDP? 1 trillion, yes. Have you delivered any 1 trillion GDP? It is just a promise. And if we were to follow your promises, go to Abosu Okai and ask them. Mr. Speaker, you are asking us to celebrate. Go and ask the Eurobond